Greeting, colleague and friend, Kambria Evans here, the teaching and learning EMDR consultant in my office in San Jose, California, where we are going to be talking about all things that give us zero disturbance as clinicians. We're going to be talking about how to create high value offerings that are EMDR informed for your clients, because we believe that these offerings should be both client centered and clinician centered. So we are here today to help you grow not just clinical confidence, but also wealth. Wealth can mean time, space, choice, financial. We can define wealth as it makes sense to us, but it's important for us to understand that we have choices as clinicians and our clients get to have choices as well. So we're going to get creative today, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is intensives. I was talking with someone this morning who purchased our intensive design kit. And she was asking me some really good questions. And so y'all know that when I hear great questions in consultation, I want to bring them to all of you. So whether you have heard about intensives, thought about intensives, are doing intensives, I think it's helpful just to get clear on some of the things that might be confusing people, okay? Now, it's November. We're coming up on 2 years in a pandemic. I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty tired. And I started talking about intensives several years ago, and doing intensives even before COVID. And we had our intensive design kit launch in December of 2020. And since that time, lots of clinicians have let us know how impactful that's been for their practice to give them more wealth, whether that's financial, time and space, and choice. And that's felt so good. It's felt so good from where I sit that I know that I'm supporting my community of therapists in that way during a hard time. It feels so good to know that clients get to have different choices about what services and offerings are available to them in their healing process, right? And what I want to talk about a little bit today is a couple of things around intensives. The first thing I want to say is, this misconception that intensives have to be these laborious 8-hour days. It's just a really outdated idea. Because here's what's true. We don't live in extremes, right? The two choices available to people, whether you're a clinician or a client, is not, well, we're going to either meet for 50 minutes a week, or we're going to meet for 8 hours a day for 3 days or 5 days. Like, we're going to have the most intensive we could ever think of, right? There's a middle, y'all. There is a middle. And this is exactly why I created the intensive design kit. It is so that you can take your existing level of clinical knowledge, right? Whether you're EMDR trained in something else, some other kind of modality, you can take what you know clinically and figure out how to put that into longer extended sessions, right? The 8-hour intensive model is not for every client. It is not for every clinician. Okay? We deserve more options. We just do. The last couple of years have taught us a lot, and what I hope we're taking away is that we have choices and we can get creative, right? We used to think that you couldn't learn EMDR online. We know that's not true. We used to think you couldn't do EMDR online or therapy online. We know that's not true, right? And what is true now is that you do not have to choose between doing either a 50-minute weekly session with your client or an 8-hour multi-day back-to-back intensive. You have choices in the middle. And the way you make those choices, right, is based on not just what's appropriate clinically for the client and their finances and their time and their life, but yours, right? I'm not going to schedule an intensive week for long days. If I'm tired and I don't feel like it, I'm not going to show up as my best self, right? So what I love about the intensive design kit is that you get to actually design what works for you. And that can mean doing a 90-minute session, a 2-hour session, a 3-hour session, a 4-hour session, right? So I hope that feels helpful in clarifying that piece. The question my client, or my consultee rather, asked today in our meeting was really, really a great one, and I want to talk about it a little bit here. So I know that a lot of us are virtual still. Some of us are meeting people in person. Some of us are kind of a hybrid, right? And it'll be interesting to see how those choices evolve and change over the next couple of years, right? Some of us are like, wow, virtual is amazing. I don't have to wear shoes. I'm not wearing shoes right now. And some of us miss people. We miss being with people. We miss like tracking their energy and attuning to their energy in person. So I want you to know that there's no right or wrong choice as long as everyone is safe, right? For clients who tend to dissociate a little bit more, I do kind of want them to be here in person, but there's ways to work with them on the computer as well, right? So I was talking with my consultee today, and she was like, what did it look like in the before times? What did it look like, right, to have people coming into your office for intensives? I'm remembering these days, right, like back in 2018 and 2019, people would fly in from out of state to come work with me. They would book a hotel near my office, near like downtown Campbell. It's really cute. And they would come in, right, for like 4 hours in person. We would do probably 90 minutes of BLS in phase 4 and a mix of like other modalities and other resourcing, things like that, other talk therapy, art therapy, sand tray, right? And then they would go back to their hotel, or they would choose to, take a walk or whatever they needed to do to kind of center themselves, right? And in that model, I did not do back-to-back intensive days, right? I wanted to space it out based on my experience as an EMDR client, wanting to have some time to integrate, right? I talk a lot about reducing the noise, reducing the fire hose of content, right? Just like our brains are not designed to get overwhelmed by a fire hose of content, I think most people's brains are not designed to comfortably have 8 hours of therapy a day. That just feels like a lot. And this is my observation, right? With my own clients, with myself as a client, and myself as a teacher or a clinician. I don't want to teach 8 hours straight. I don't want to do therapy 8 hours straight. That sounds miserable, okay? So I just want us to understand that when we talk about intensives, we are not only talking about this intensive model, okay? We're talking about how do we give you and your clients options in terms of length of session, in terms of in-person and virtual, okay? So the most I ever really did before COVID was I would have people come in, they might do like a week here with me in California, and they would do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 hours. I'm done, right? I don't want to go longer than 4 hours. They don't want to do it either, okay? Again, this is not every person, but it's most people if you think about it, right? And then they would fly home, and then they would kind of reattach to their primary therapist. And that would be kind of my adjunct role, right? And then I might have somebody who maybe is in California or local would come into my office for just a half day, just for 4 hours. Maybe I would go to 5, depending on the case, okay? But what is important in this algorithm is that I was considering myself that if I go longer than that, I'm not going to feel good. Okay. Now, I'm sure there are some therapists out there who can go all day and they can feel energized and feel great, and good for y'all. Y'all probably don't have twins or like making you, go crazy and tired. But I can't ever imagine myself being somebody who does an 8-hour intensive day. It just feels like a lot. So what happened when people came into my office? How did I take care of myself? How did they take care of themselves? Well, we have a beautiful, beautiful conference room. We have like a little kitchen. We have a waiting area. So I would actually set up the conference room for that client, right? And I would have like food and snacks out, water, coffee, tea. I would have there's a couch in there with like a blanket. There would even be like a sign on the door that's like, EMDR intensive room, and they could close the door because every 50 minutes we would take a 10-minute break. right? Sometimes the client would just go to the room and just kind of sit there or like curl up and chill out, go to the bathroom. But I needed a break. I needed that 10 minutes to like walk around, move my body. Maybe put some like, lavender scents on my body for just like energy regulation, eat, go to the bathroom, water, all of that, right? Because there's no way I'm doing 4 hours straight, right? So please, if you're doing in-person intensives, whether they're 3 hours or 4 hours, or if you're going to 8 hours, great. I would encourage you to give yourself so many breaks, like more than you think than you need, right? And the client will appreciate it too. Again, because we don't want to fire hose content, right? Just like when we are thinking about dual awareness, right? If you're an EMDR therapist, we are thinking about looking at the trauma, looking at the work that needs to be done, and then taking a break and coming back to the safe and present moment in the therapy office. Okay, we're kind of resourcing, going in, resourcing, going in. Same is true with intensive work, right? Now, virtually, it's different. It's different virtually. I will not go longer than 2 hours on the computer. I will not do it. It feels so terrible for me and the client. Okay. Now everyone's different, but people ask me this all the time. So I wanted to share it with you guys. I typically will work more intensively now, which means I'll do like a 90-minute, a 2 hour, right? Once a month, once a quarter, depending on what the client needs. I work as an adjunct therapist. I work as the primary therapist. But I do not have weekly clients anymore. I do not have regularly scheduled clients anymore. That's not the way that I work. So thinking about what might work for you, whether you're in person or virtual, whether you have people flying in and flying out, or driving in or driving out, I just want to encourage you to think about what's going to work for you. Because here's what's true. If we zoom out and we look at the context of what's happening now, y'all, we are almost 2 years on a global pandemic. We are tired people, okay? And we see this in healthcare. We see the nurses quitting, the doctors are quitting, they're burnt out. You can only say you're burnt out so much before you're just gonna walk away. And I think what's been really cool about going into this model, now granted this was before COVID, I was doing this. What's cool about this model is that I think it actually prevents burnout. I really truly believe that. Which is why my body recoils when I think about doing 8 hours of therapy a day for 3 days in a row or 5 days in a row. It's just, that feels so overwhelming. Like I'm really in a space of like needing to have space. And initially, the reason I started to do intensives was because I had twins and the weekly model felt terrible. Like to be locked into that schedule felt terrible, right? So I switched because of what was happening in my season of life with my family and my babies. But now my kids are 5, they're in school, they got their first vaccine shot, and I'm in a pandemic, and it's like, yeah, this still feels good. This intensive model or working intensively still feels good for me right now. I feel like I have enough space that even though I'm tired, like I'm not crispy, I'm not burnt out the way that I used to get in the winter, right? Before COVID, before I started doing intensives, okay? So if you're somebody who's crispy or you know somebody who's crispy, I hope that you can share this episode with them just to let them know that they have other alternatives, right? They had choices beyond a 50-minute weekly session versus an 8-hour intensive for 3 days. Like both of those schedules are kind of intense. Like they're big commitments, right? There's something that feels like there's more space and more choices with either working intensively or doing intensives in a way that work for the clinician and the client, okay? We get to consider ourselves, y'all, to show up and do a good job, right? We have to be considered in this algorithm, in this formula. So with that being said, I hope that feels helpful in terms of answering some questions about like the timing and the clinical reasoning behind it in terms of like everyone's sanity and self-care, and zooming out and noticing the context of what we're living in right now. If you have not heard about the Intensive Design Kit, I would encourage you to go to the ZeroDisturbance.com website and check it out. It has been incredibly popular and successful over the last year since we put it out last year in December. And again, if you know somebody who might benefit from not feeling so locked into a weekly schedule, share the love. Give them this content with a heart and a ribbon around it, so that they know that they have some choices, and they don't have to be like the nurses and doctors who are just like, it's either this intense fire hose or I have to quit, right? So with that being said, y'all, I'm always rooting for your success. I love getting emails from you about how you're doing, what you want to learn, how the content that I've shared has been helpful to you. I always create all my content, all my videos and podcasts, all my products online, based on what you have told me that you need but you do not have, right? And we are the only intensive design kit available on the market that is going to help you customize in a way that works for you. We're not coming from some rigid model that's going to feel overwhelming to you, because the point is not to overwhelm. The point is to nourish and love. So with that being said, I will look forward to connecting with you next time. In the meantime, please stay safe, healthy, and we'll talk soon. Take care.